Atomization is finally upon us, and that means that everyone is going to rush to spend those sweet, sweet atoms to build the deck of our dreams. But before you go on and spend all your atoms, I wanted to give my crafting advice, and this is specifically geared toward the free-to-play and budget players, because I think the crafting strategy for those players is a lot different than those that have all the atoms and a lot more resources to spend on crafting cards. My first big piece of advice is to choose two factions to really invest your atoms in up front, especially if you don't have a lot. For this example, we're going to use the energy and tactics factions to show you what I mean. Let's say you want to build a Zatanna deck and you want to go into the spell theme as far as building your deck, or let's say you already have that but you're missing some key components to it. My big advice and kind of the basis of all this is you want the base of your deck and the core of your deck to be as strong as possible, and then you'll be able to add on some of those extra, maybe high cost legendary cards along the way. And what I mean by that is, for example, John Constantine, a really good staple in any spell deck that you're going to want to run. And to make a Constantine, since he is a blue, it only costs 75 to make a Constantine. So let's say you have 0 Constantines, you want to build a spell deck. By building 2 Constantines, that's only 150. While at the same time, a lot of these spell decks also have the higher end, and they want to run like Giovanna. Giovanna is going to run you 300 atoms to craft. So when you think about it, the building that base of your deck, and while Giovanna is a necessary thing, you can budget around the effect that Giovanna gives you, for example, by including or crafting a Hellblaze, which is only 75 a pop to craft, as opposed to the 300 Giovanna would craft. So instead of crafting 2 Giovannas right off the bat, just because, oh, that's the big finisher in the deck, if you don't have a good enough base of your deck to get to those finishers, you're never going to win games. And so I think that by crafting that good base of your deck, you're going to have a lot more success and be able to win more games along the way to getting the resources or opening the packs to get a big card like Giovanna, or even Hal Jordan if you want to go in the Lantern route. While Hal Jordan is super good and a super strong big card, there are other big card options that you can budget in as long as you have the rest of the Green Lanterns. For example, John Stewart is only 300 to craft, and John Stewart is probably one of the best lanterns in the game because his attack or his deploy is so versatile that you can either take out minions, you can push a little extra to face, and he's just a little bit cheaper of an option than ponying up and buying the Hal Jordan, sitting that John Stewart only costs 300 to craft. For another example, over on the tactics side, I know that personally I have been defeated and I've had a lot of struggles when people drop a Batmobile on me, and for the longest time I was like, man, as soon as I get the atoms, I'm crafting Batmobile, this is what I want to do. But Batmobile is a one-off card and it's 1200 atoms, which is quite a bit of a sink. So let's say you don't have the best base of cards for your tactics to build up on, then Batmobile, you can buy it, but you only get 1 copy in your deck, and you might not even draw it a lot of games. A really good comparable one to the Batmobile is the Bat Cycle. It does a similar thing with giving evade. While it doesn't have the attack, it does let you draw a card and charge your leader. And Bat Cycle is included in a lot more variety of decks than maybe Batmobile will. So not only am I advising that you just focus on 2 factions particularly and craft the good base of cards into those, but while you have 1 good tactics, and let's say you wanted to pair it with might, but you don't have a lot of might cards, at least you have your tactics base built up from those 2 factions you initially chose to build up and get that good base of cards. And I think that's just the most important take home, is you want this strong base of cards, that way you're able to build more decks while still not jeopardizing the core integrity of the decks you're going to play. So if you don't have 2 Robins, for example, while at 300 it's definitely a little bit more pricey, the Robin card is just so good, and you see it pop up just generally in most tactics decks, no matter what the combination of the other leader is. So it will help your maybe factions you don't have the strongest base to, it will help propel that up because you have this good tactics base. So I just think that's so important for a lot of free-to-play and budget players to hear, that if you just choose 2 factions, build 2 good bases up, and then as you get more resources, you can begin to craft bigger cards like Batmobile, or if you don't have a Batman, or whatever the big shiny gold card that you want is, you can always find a more budget-friendly option as a finisher or just a big card in general to help you get over that gap, especially by having the good basic cards. You're probably going to win more games, you're going to be more likely to play more, which gets you more resources in turn, which will allow you to build those up, to cash them in, to put those big finishers or those big gold cards at the end of your deck on your deck. On the leader side, I actually think leaders are actually really good value to craft. So if there's one leader you really want to try out, I know Shazam is especially strong in the meta right now, so crafting a Shazam would actually be a good thing, and it's only 1,000, so it's even less than one of the legendary cards that you could craft in your deck, and so why not have the better leader as opposed to just a better one-off card that might go in multiple decks but will probably just maybe fit into one deck. And I guess you could force it into other things, but then you they're a little less optimized and things like that. So that's really my biggest take home is with your crafting and building these cards and building your collection, you want to make sure that you just have a strong base and you're not just swinging for the fence and you're only able to craft 2 cards as opposed to you can craft like 2 Diggles for 150. And that's just such a low entry on barrier as far as making your overall deck much better, because having these commons and rares and epic cards that really fill out the deck, and the ones that usually last the test of time over the course of different metas and expansion cycles and things like that, that it'll make your core deck so much better. And that way you're not just like, well, I blew it all and I crafted a Superman, so now I don't have any other atoms to craft all the other good might cards that I might want. So just something to think about, especially budget free-to-play players. I think it's really good advice, and that way you don't get trapped in the sinkhole that is just crafting legendary minions.